My wife, Claire, had been a bundle of stress for weeks. It was a constant cycle of late nights hunched over her laptop, early mornings rushing out the door, and endless talk about projects and deadlines. I barely saw her, and when I did, she was distant, her mind clearly somewhere else. So, when she told me she needed to go on a 2-day business trip, I didn't question it. She worked in marketing, after all. Travel was part of the job, a normal occurrence. I just nodded, told her to be safe, and hoped she'd come back a little more relaxed. But even as I tried to be the supportive husband, something felt off. It was a subtle, nagging feeling in the back of my mind. It started with her packing. She was too excited. There was a lightness in her step, a spark in her eye that hadn't been there for months. It wasn't the tired resignation of someone heading off for work. It was the giddy anticipation of a vacation. Then, the perfume. She spritzed on a scent she hadn't touched in years, one she used to wear when we first started dating. The floral notes filled the bedroom, a ghost of happier times. The real alarm bell, though, was the red dress. Tucked carefully into her suitcase, its silk fabric was a bold slash of crimson against her sensible business blouses. It was our asterisk dress. The one she wore for our anniversary dinners, for special celebrations, for nights that were just about us. I watched her fold it, a lump forming in my throat. I had to ask, why do you need the red dress for a conference? I tried to keep my tone light, casual, but the question hung heavy in the air between us. She laughed, a sound that didn't quite reach her eyes. It's just for a fancy dinner with clients, okay? Don't be weird. She zipped the suitcase shut, and with it, the conversation. She left on a Friday morning, kissing me goodbye at the door. It was a quick, absent-minded peck on the cheek. I spent the day trying to shake off the unease, telling myself I was overthinking, that I was being the weird one she'd accused me of being. I tidied up the house, did some work, and tried to enjoy the quiet. By Friday night, the quiet had become deafening. I was making a simple dinner, the silence of the house pressing in on me, when the first crack appeared in the fragile reality I'd built for myself. Her phone, left behind on the kitchen counter, suddenly lit up and started ringing. I glanced over, annoyed she'd forgotten it, but then I saw the caller ID. It wasn't a name. It wasn't even just a number. It was 2 words and a room number. Hotel Beacon, room 912. My heart did a strange, painful lurch. Hotel Beacon. I knew that place. It was a boutique hotel downtown, not some generic airport conference center. And why would a hotel room, specifically room 912, be calling her personal phone? Hotels don't call you from a specific room. People do. My curiosity, which had been a low hum all day, morphed into something cold and sharp. My hands felt clammy. Every paranoid thought I'd pushed away came roaring back. Before I could stop myself, my hand was reaching for the phone. I swiped to answer, my thumb trembling slightly. I put the phone to my ear, my own breathing loud in the silence. "Hello," I said, my voice barely a whisper. There was a pause on the other end. Then a man's voice, low and intimate, slurred just slightly. "Hey baby, you coming back up?" I ordered champagne. Time stopped. The air left my lungs. My entire world, everything I thought I knew, my marriage, my wife, my future, just dropped. It fell into a deep, echoing silence where the only sound was the frantic, panicked drumming of my own heart. The champagne, the red dress, the fancy dinner with clients. It all clicked into place with sickening clarity. I couldn't speak. I couldn't breathe. I just stood there, the phone pressed to my ear, listening to the silence on the other end before the man, confused, hung up. I slowly lowered the phone, my hand shaking so hard I almost dropped it. I looked around our kitchen, at the photos of us on the fridge, smiling, happy. It all felt like a lie. A scene from someone else's life. Who was this man? How long had this been going on? The weeks of stress, the late nights, were they ever about work? My mind was a chaotic storm. I felt a surge of white-hot anger, followed by a wave of nausea. I wanted to smash something, to scream, to call her and demand an explanation. But what would I say? "Hi, honey. Enjoying the champagne with your lover?" I sank into a kitchen chair, my head in my hands. The business trip was a sham. My wife, the woman I loved and trusted, was in a hotel room with another man wearing the dress she used to wear for me. The next 2 days were a special kind of hell. I didn't sleep. I barely ate. I just paced the house, her phone like a dead weight in my pocket, replaying that man's voice over and over in my head. "Hey, baby." Each time it was like a fresh stab to the chest. I was torn between wanting to confront her the second she walked through the door and wanting to just pack a bag and leave before she ever came back. When she finally returned on Sunday evening, she was glowing. She breezed in, dropping her bags and chattering about how productive the conference was. "It was so draining, but we got so much done," she said, smiling that same fake smile. She came to hug me, and I flinched. The scent of that perfume, now mixed with something else, something unfamiliar, made me sick. She pulled back, her smile faltering. "What's wrong?" she asked, a flicker of confusion in her eyes. I just looked at her. I looked at the woman I had married, the woman I thought I knew, and saw a complete stranger. The anger I'd been suppressing finally boiled over. I couldn't play this game anymore. I pulled her phone out of my pocket and held it up. "You forgot something," I said, my voice dangerously calm. Her eyes widened as she saw the phone, and for the first time, I saw genuine panic flash across her face. "Oh, I was looking everywhere for that," she stammered, reaching for it. I pulled it back. "I wouldn't worry about that," I said, my voice turning to ice. "I think room 912 at the Hotel Beacon was more worried." "They called for you." Her face went white. All the color drained from her cheeks and her mouth opened slightly, but no words came out. She knew. She knew that I knew. The charade was over. "He sounded really eager for you to come back up," I continued, my voice trembling with rage and hurt. "He even ordered champagne." I watched as her carefully constructed world of lies crumbled around her. The confident, bubbly woman who had walked in minutes before was gone, replaced by a cornered, guilty stranger. The silence in the room was heavier than anything I had ever experienced. It was the end of our marriage, and it was happening right there in our kitchen. And I knew, with a certainty that chilled me to the bone, that nothing would ever be the same again. My life, as I knew it, was over. I had to decide what to do next, how to pick up the pieces of a life that had just been shattered by a single phone call. I didn't yell at the guy. I didn't threaten him. I just said, "Wrong number," and hung up. Then I grabbed my keys. The ringing in my ears was louder than the silence in the house. My heart was pounding, a frantic drumbeat against my ribs. The hotel was 2 hours away. 2 hours. It felt like an eternity, but also like no time at all. I drove through the night, the world outside my windshield just a blur of passing lights. My mind was a relentless movie projector, replaying every moment of our marriage in my head. Every single promise we made, whispered late at night. Every hug that felt like coming home. And now, every quiet lie she must have told. Each one a tiny crack in the foundation I thought was so solid. I remembered her telling me about this work conference. The way she'd packed her bag, humming a little tune. She'd kissed me goodbye at the door. Her smile so genuine, so normal. "I'll miss you," she'd said. Was that a lie too? Was anything real? The thought was a physical ache in my chest. The miles disappeared under my tires, each one bringing me closer to a truth I wasn't sure I could handle. When I finally pulled into the hotel parking lot, the sky was starting to soften from black to a deep, bruised purple. The air was cold, and it bit at my skin as I walked towards the entrance. The lobby was quiet, sterile, smelling faintly of disinfectant and stale coffee. I walked straight to the front desk, my steps feeling heavy, like I was wading through water. A young clerk with tired eyes looked up from his computer. I leaned on the counter, trying to keep my voice steady. "Room 912, I said. The number felt foreign on my tongue. "My wife Claire, she forgot her medication. It's important. Can you just tell me if she checked in?" The clerk typed something into his keyboard, the soft clicking echoing in the silent lobby. He nodded, his expression neutral. "Yes, sir. She checked in at 5:42 p.m. He paused, then added, "with another guest." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. With another guest. It wasn't just a suspicion anymore. It was real. I swallowed the pain, a bitter metallic taste in my mouth. My hands were shaking, so I clenched them into fists in my pockets. Could you call the room?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "Tell her her husband is here to drop something off." The clerk looked at me with a flicker of sympathy, or maybe just professional concern. He picked up the receiver and dialed. After a moment, I heard the faint, tinny sound of a voice through the earpiece. "Claire, hello?" she said. The clerk cleared his throat. "Ma'am," he said, keeping his tone perfectly flat. "Your husband is here to see you." The silence that followed was deafening. It stretched on for so long that the clerk glanced at me nervously, his own composure starting to crack. I just stood there, frozen, listening to the static of an empty phone line. Finally, her voice came back, but it was different. It was thin, brittle, and shaking. "Tell him to wait." Good, I thought, a cold, hard satisfaction blooming in my chest. She knows. The fear in her voice was a small, bitter victory. The clerk hung up and gave me an apologetic shrug. "She said to wait, sir." I just nodded. I didn't move. I just stood there, staring at the polished silver doors of the elevator, waiting. It felt like hours passed, but the clock on the wall told me it was only 2 minutes. 2 minutes for her world to crumble, just like mine had. Then the elevator dinged. The doors slid open, and there she was. Claire. Her hair was messy, tangled around her face. She was wearing a white hotel robe, the kind that never quite closes right, and it was barely tied at her waist. Her mascara was smudged under her eyes, dark streaks on her pale skin. It looked like she'd been crying, or maybe kissing, or maybe both. And then I saw him. Just behind her, a man I'd never seen before peeked out from the hallway, wrapped in a towel, his hair wet. He saw me, his eyes widened, and he vanished back into the room. Claire took a hesitant step forward, her mouth opening as if she was about to speak, to offer some pathetic excuse or a desperate lie. But I didn't give her the chance. I didn't say a word. I just held up my phone, my hand surprisingly steady. I hit play. And the voice of the man from her room, the man who had called my number by mistake, filled the quiet lobby. His casual, intimate tone, the words he'd said, all of it echoed between us. I watched her face as she listened. I watched it collapse. The color drained from her cheeks, her eyes widened in horror, and her mouth fell open in a silent, devastated gasp. And in that moment, she knew. She knew that I knew everything. There were no more lies to hide behind. There was only the ugly, undeniable truth hanging in the air between us. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and subscribe for more content just like this. We sat in the hotel lobby, the air thick with unspoken words and the faint, cloying scent of cheap air freshener. She kept repeating herself, a broken record of excuses. "It's not what you think," she'd say, her voice a desperate whisper. "It only happened once. I made a mistake. I was lonely. Please don't leave." The justifications poured out of her, a relentless flood from a broken pipe. Each one a smaller, sharper shard of the trust she'd just shattered. I didn't yell. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't even cry. The betrayal felt too vast, too absolute for any simple emotion. It was a black hole, and it had swallowed everything. I just sat there, listening to the cacophony of her apologies, and I felt a strange sense of calm descend over me. It was the calm of inevitability, the quiet acceptance of an ending that had already been written. I looked at her, really looked at her, and the person I thought I knew was gone, replaced by a stranger wearing her face. The woman I had built a life with, shared dreams with, was a ghost. In her place was someone who could look me in the eye and lie. Someone who could plan a secret life while I was at home, waiting. Finally, when her stream of excuses slowed to a trickle, I spoke. My voice was quiet, almost a whisper, but it cut through the tension in the room like a razor. "You didn't go on a business trip," I said, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. "You went on a rehearsal for your future without me." The truth of it hung in the air between us, undeniable and devastating. It wasn't just a mistake, a moment of weakness. It was a calculated decision, a trial run for a life where I no longer had a part. Her face crumpled. The carefully constructed dam of her composure finally broke, and she began to sob, great gulping breaths that shook her whole body. She reached for me, her fingers digging into my arm, her touch feeling foreign and unwelcome. "Please," she begged, her voice thick with tears. "Please, just give me another chance. We can fix this." But I knew we couldn't. Trust isn't glue. You can just piece it back together once it's been shattered into a million tiny fragments. The cracks will always be there, a constant, ugly reminder of the break. You can try to hold it together, but it will never be whole again. It will never be strong. Slowly, I pulled my arm away and stood up. The movement felt heavy, like I was moving through water. I turned and walked toward the exit, each step a definitive move away from the life we had built and toward an unknown future. The revolving door spun, pushing me out into the cold night air. The chill was a shock, a sudden, sharp reality check. She followed me, her footsteps a frantic echo of my own. "Please, don't end us like this," she whispered, her breath a white cloud in the darkness. Her voice was small, lost in the vastness of the city night. I paused, my hand on the car door, and turned back to face her one last time. The streetlights cast long, distorted shadows, making her look like a phantom from a life I no longer recognized. I needed her to understand. I needed to say the one thing that had been replaying in my mind ever since I first called her hotel room, ever since a man's voice answered on the other end of the line. "Claire," I said, my own voice steady and final. "The moment he answered your phone for you, we were already over. There was nothing left to say." I got into my car, the click of the lock sounding an absolute. I didn't look back as I drove away. I didn't want to see her standing there, a monument to our failed marriage. The drive home was a blur. The city lights smeared across the windshield, a kaleidoscope of meaningless colors. I drove on autopilot, my mind a blank slate, scrubbed clean of the last decade. When I walked back into our house, it felt hollow, an empty stage where a play had just ended. The following week, I filed for divorce. The paperwork was cold, impersonal, a series of boxes to be ticked. But as I signed my name on the final line, a feeling I hadn't experienced in years washed over me. It wasn't happiness, not yet. It was something quieter, something more profound. It was a sense of clarity, of rightness. And for the first time in a very long time, my life finally felt honest. The lies were gone, the secrets were out, and all that was left was the raw, painful, and ultimately liberating truth. I was alone, but I was finally free.